Welcome to Buddhism Seeds. Right now, in this very moment, as you're listening to these words, you are stepping into a journey that many people believe they must travel far to find. But in truth, you are already practicing the Buddha's teachings, perhaps without even realizing it. The peace you've long been yearning for isn't hidden in some distant place. It is breathing with you, quietly present in the seemingly ordinary moments of life. You might be tossing and turning in the middle of the night, sitting quietly on a bus seat, or simply walking down a familiar path. Whatever the setting, you've just touched an opportunity to change how you see your life. And the miracle is this: you don't need to become a different person or force yourself into complex rituals. You only need to recognize what is already here within this very moment. I'd like to invite you to share. Where are you listening from? What time of day is it for you? When we connect beyond space and time in this way, the ancient wisdom of the Buddha is revived once more in modern life, illuminating the peaceful path that lies right before us. So take a moment to release, to breathe deeply, to adjust your posture, and get comfortable, because what you're about to hear may open a door you never expected. In life, it's often not the big events that cause the most suffering, but rather the small frictions in our everyday relationships. A careless word, a failure to listen, a cold glance. These are enough to weigh down the heart. Have you ever felt that pain when the people you love the most are the ones who end up hurting you? Or perhaps it was you who said something only to look back and feel regret. The Buddha taught to conquer thousands in battle is nothing compared to conquering yourself. That is the greatest victory. If we can turn inward and truly see our own anger, that is the root of transformation. Long ago, on a high mountain shrouded in mist, there was a secluded Zen monastery deep in a quiet pine forest. There, day after day, passed with the sound of bells, echoing wind whispering through the trees, and the steady footsteps of those devoted to the path. Among them was a young monk who was well known throughout the monastery, not for his discipline, but for his uncontrollable temper. He was diligent and hard-working, but even a small mistake like misplacing an object or saying the wrong thing would trigger a fierce outburst. Many respected his efforts but kept their distance uneasy around his sudden flare-ups. People often whispered, "He's like a sleeping volcano. One small noise, and he'll erupt." One chilly autumn afternoon, the monks were preparing dinner together. The smell of freshly harvested rice filled the kitchen pots, bubbling, everyone busy yet calm. But in a single moment, that peace was broken. A young monk hurrying with a water jug accidentally dropped it. Water spilled across the floor. Before the sound of the splash had even faded, a thunderous voice rang out. It was the hot-tempered monk. His eyes were red. His voice boomed through the room. "What are you doing? You can't even handle one simple task, always clumsy and troublesome." The air turned heavy. Knives stopped chopping. Spoons went still. The brothers exchanged uneasy glances, but no one spoke. The kitchen, once warm with fire and brotherhood, now felt covered in a cold mist. At that very moment, the door opened. The head Zen master entered. He was elderly, his steps slow, his face calm, like a still autumn lake. No one knew how much of the shouting he had heard. But instead of scolding, he remained silent, his gentle gaze moving slowly around the room. He walked over to the wooden table where a small candle was set. Slowly, he struck a match and lit the candle. A soft golden light spread through the room, reflecting in every eye. Everyone was drawn into this quiet act, not knowing why he did it. There stood the candle, its flame small but proud, flickering yet radiant in the silence. All eyes were fixed on it. When the attention had fully gathered, the master spoke. His voice was low but clear, every word etched into the room. This flame, when it burns in stillness, gives light and warmth. But if a strong wind blows, it can burn down the entire room. He paused, turning his eyes to the angry monk, and continued, "The human mind is the same. When it abides in stillness, it is light. But when swept away by reaction, it becomes a fire that destroys." In that moment, the room went completely still, as if the outburst had never happened. The young monk lowered his head. His shoulders trembled, and tears began to fall, sparkling under the candlelight. He suddenly saw himself as that strong wind, turning the light within him into destruction. Memories came flooding back of the times he had hurt his fellow monks. Their furrowed brows, fearful eyes, the ruined meal times, all because of his shouting. The master's words were like a mirror, reflecting a truth he had long avoided. He saw that anger hadn't made him stronger. It had only pushed others away. From that day forward, he practiced differently. Each time anger arose, he remembered the candle. He paused. He breathed. He let the fire return to light instead of becoming a scorching wind. Slowly, the other monks noticed the change. The one who used to lash out now listened in silence, offering smiles instead of harsh words. The story spread through the monastery. It became a living lesson more powerful than any sermon. They called it the lesson of the candle. No scolding was needed, just one image. One timely silence was enough to plant the seed of transformation. And from then on, everyone understood that real strength doesn't lie in reacting, but in the ability to be fully present in stillness. Like the candle, when undisturbed by wind, it shines not only for itself, but lights the path for others. The candle story isn't just a simple reminder to stay calm. It opens the door to a deeper understanding of non-reactive presence. It doesn't mean staying silent and indifferent or pretending not to feel anything. Nor does it mean suppressing emotions beneath a calm exterior. On the contrary, it is a full state of awareness where you can witness anger, sorrow, or anxiety rising, but not let them carry you away like a flood. You stand steady, like solid ground, observing all movement without being swept up. When you're present in this way, the energy around you instantly shifts. Imagine, instead of responding with harsh words, you choose to listen with an open heart and speak gently. In that very moment, the heavy air in the room softens like a cool breeze blowing through a hot summer day. In a family, this could be the thread that saves a strained marriage, helping spouses understand rather than fall into endless arguments. Children, sensing a parent's non-judgmental presence, will feel safe to open up instead of living in fear. At work, this kind of presence makes collaboration easier, opening the door to creative solutions instead of conflict. In the community, it becomes the glue that fosters connection, planting trust in people's hearts as they feel heard and understood. Remember the image of a handful of salt. If dropped into a small cup of water, the water becomes bitter, undrinkable. But that same salt in a vast lake is barely noticeable. The human heart is the same. When our hearts are small, A single insult can throw us into deep suffering. But when the heart is spacious, like a lake, such words dissolve. They can no longer disturb our peace. So the question is, do you want your heart to be a small cup easily overwhelmed by salt, or a vast lake that can hold it all? In that choice lies the path of meditation. Not to become emotionless, but to build the capacity to let all emotions move through you without breaking you. This is living wisdom you can apply to every word, every glance, every moment of daily life. The foundation of all relationships, whether family, friendship, or work, is built on two pillars: compassion and mindfulness. Compassion helps us step out of self-centered views and put ourselves in another's shoes. Then we don't just see their actions, we see the pain behind those actions. Someone may be angry, but beneath that anger lies an unhealed wound. Someone may be closed off, but beneath that is a heart afraid of rejection. With compassion, we see the person, not just their behavior. Mindfulness serves as the brake for the mind. When anger arises, mindfulness tells us to stop to recognize it, rather than quickly throwing out words that might harm others. A short pause. Sometimes just a few breaths can change the entire outcome. Today, neuroscience confirms this. Just a few deep breaths in moments of stress lower stress hormones, slow the heart, and clear the mind. This is where ancient wisdom meets modern science, where the Buddha's teachings on mindfulness are affirmed by research. The best part is, you don't need to wait for a special occasion to begin. You can start right now in the smallest moments. When you hear criticism, try inhaling deeply, exhaling slowly, and listening fully without reacting. Before you speak, ask yourself, will this bring peace? If the answer is no, maybe silence or gentler words are better. When someone makes a mistake, instead of judging, try offering a kind reminder. You'll see the atmosphere begin to shift, becoming lighter, warmer, and more pleasant. Every change within you doesn't stop with you. It ripples outward. A compassionate gaze can melt someone's anger. A kind word can end a long-standing argument. A peaceful presence can calm an entire room. This is the miraculous power of Dharma in relationships and community, where even your smallest act becomes a seed planted in shared soil, blooming into trust, peace, and harmony. And it doesn't end there. Because even when you're simply washing a bowl, sweeping a floor, or sipping tea, those ordinary moments can become spiritual practice. Let's now enter a story that shows us how daily life is already meditation. And in every small act, you may find a doorway to peace. In the journey of spiritual practice, many people often think that meditation must be about sitting in complete silence for long periods in a meditation hall with a peaceful atmosphere, the scent of incense and the sound of bells ringing. But in reality, it's quite different. Your busy life, with all the little things you do each day, from washing dishes, making tea, walking into the yard, or taking care of your children, is actually a precious opportunity to practice. Have you ever found yourself washing dishes while thinking about unfinished tasks, sipping tea while worrying about tomorrow, or walking while replaying someone's hurtful words in your mind? In those moments, your body is present in what you're doing, but your mind has gone elsewhere. And that right there is the root of unease. The Buddha once said, "Mindfulness is the path to the deathless." Heedlessness is the path to death. The mindful never die. The heedless are as if already dead. This teaching reminds us that if we can return to each moment of life, that alone is meditation, the most vivid and living Dharma practice. One day, a young layman came to a monastery, his face weary. He knelt before the Zen master and said, "Master, my life is too busy. Family work, constant worries. I want to meditate. I want to practice, but I never have enough time. How can I fulfill my responsibilities and still follow the path?" The Zen master didn't answer right away. He simply smiled gently and pointed to a steaming cup of tea in front of him. His voice was soft, but every word landed firmly in the listener's mind. "Look here. I am drinking tea, just drinking tea. When I walk, I just walk. When I wash dishes, I just wash dishes. When I care for a child, I just care for the child. That is meditation." The layman looked confused. It sounded too simple, almost obvious. He thought to himself, if it's just drinking tea, what does that have to do with meditation? His face showed his doubt. The master noticed, but said nothing. He simply smiled kindly. Then he stood and asked the layman to follow him to the garden behind the monastery. There stood an old well with cool, clear water all year round. The master slowly tied a bucket to a rope and began drawing water. Every movement was slow and steady, as if both his body and mind were united with the action. As he lifted the bucket, he bent down to wash his hands in the water. The stream flowed through his fingers, the sunlight dancing like gold on the surface. As he washed his hands, he breathed evenly, his eyes calm and bright. There was no rush, no mind wandering elsewhere. When he finished, the master looked up and said, "See, I do the same ordinary tasks as anyone else. The difference is this: my mind is fully present. When body and mind are in the same place, that is meditation. Practicing doesn't mean abandoning life, letting go of responsibilities, or running away. It means learning to live fully in what you're already doing." The layman fell silent. In that moment, he saw something he had never noticed before. For years, he had lived in fragments. At work, he thought about his family. At dinner with his wife and kids, he worried about tomorrow's tasks. Walking down the street, his mind wandered into distant plans. His body was in one place, his mind in another. That's why, even though he was always busy, he never truly lived a single moment. The master's words echoed in his mind like a temple bell. When body and mind are in one place, that is meditation. He suddenly realized that the problem wasn't a lack of time. It was a lack of presence in what he was already doing. A light turned on in his heart. Meditation wasn't about finding a quiet corner or sitting in strict postures for hours. Meditation is sipping tea in awareness. It's washing a bowl without letting the mind wander. It's hearing a child's laughter and fully being with that joy. It's walking through a crowded market without letting your mind drift with the noise. He bowed deeply, tears falling quietly, not from sorrow, but from the joy of having found a path. From that moment, he decided to meditate in every small act of daily life, when cooking, driving, or speaking with loved ones. And he discovered that miraculously, each simple moment could become a doorway to peace. This story reminds us that meditation isn't far away. It's not a complicated technique or a privilege reserved for a few. Meditation is the ability to live fully with what's happening right now. The story reveals a simple truth. often forgotten, meditation is not about form. It's not just about sitting cross-legged in silence or performing lengthy rituals. Meditation is a way of living. When you wash dishes with full attention, each drop of water touches your hands, and each bowl becomes brighter under your focused care. That moment is meditation. When you make tea and truly savor each sip, feel its warmth spread through your body. Breathe in its fragrance. That too is meditation. When you walk and feel each step, each breath in rhythm with your body, that is meditation. This practice helps us escape a common illness of modern life. The body is here, but the mind is elsewhere. How often do you sit at the table but worry about tomorrow's work? How often do you talk to a loved one while your eyes are glued to your phone? This mental disconnect breeds anxiety, fragments our lives, and leaves us always feeling like something is missing. When body and mind unite in the present moment, we truly live instead of just existing. Imagine someone rowing a boat down a river. If his hands are on the oars, but his mind is lost in yesterday's argument or tomorrow's worry, the boat will easily crash or drift off course. But if the rower is fully present, eyes on the current, hands steady, the boat will glide smoothly forward. Life is the same. Every small task is an oar. If done mindfully, our boat moves toward peace. If done in distraction, it veers towards suffering. And the miracle is, you don't need anything more than the mindfulness already within you. Even as you sip water, brush your teeth, or step outside the door, if you're truly present, you're already meditating. You don't have to look far or wait for perfect conditions. Everything you need for peace is already in your daily life, in the small details you often overlook. The key is mindfulness. Mindfulness is like a light that shines onto even the most ordinary tasks, turning them into nourishment for body and soul. A meal without mindfulness is just routine eating fast, swallowing quickly, worrying about something else. But with mindfulness, each bite reminds us of the miraculous web of life, the rain that grew the rice, the farmer who harvested it, the hands that cooked it. A simple meal, when eaten with gratitude, can become a deep spiritual practice. It's the same with housework. If done in a rush, it's a burden. But if done mindfully, every sweep, every wipe, every act of tidying becomes a way to also tidy the mind. As the home grows brighter, the heart grows lighter. When the outer space is clear, the inner space begins to feel clearer too. This is the subtle harmony between body and mind when we live fully in each action. Modern science has confirmed this. Brain imaging studies show that when people practice mindfulness, such as focusing on breathing or staying aware during daily activities, the brain's default network related to anxiety and overthinking becomes less active. At the same time, the areas responsible for emotional regulation and attention become stronger. In other words, just by washing dishes with mindfulness, your brain rests, stress decreases, and peace begins to arise. What's remarkable is that this practice doesn't require more time. You don't have to quit your job, climb a mountain, or find a special retreat. You only need to return your mind to what you're already doing. When caring for your child, truly be with them. When walking, feel every step. When drinking water, know that you are drinking water. That's it, and even just that can open the path to liberation. So daily life is already meditation. Every small task can become a doorway to mindfulness. But to understand why we often lose our peace, we must look deeper to what Buddhism calls the three poisons: craving, anger, and delusion. These root poisons quietly influence our thoughts and actions, and they are the source of much of our suffering. In life, there may be moments when you ask yourself, why do I still feel uneasy, even when I already have what I wished for? Why can a single word in a relationship set my heart on fire? And why do I often confuse passing emotions with my true self? All of these arise from what the Buddha called the three poisons: greed, anger, and delusion. Greed is when you constantly want more or want something different, even in your spiritual practice. Some people meditate, but they still hope for peace to come quickly, for enlightenment to arrive soon, like planting a seed today and expecting fruit tomorrow. Anger is the energy that resists what is. When things don't go your way, you react immediately, like a fire flaring up and burning everything around it. Delusion is not seeing your mind clearly. It's mistaking thoughts for truth and emotions for identity. When you're sad, you think you are the sadness. When you're angry, you believe you are the anger. The Buddha once taught in the Anguttara Nikaya, because of greed, anger, and delusion, people create karma. Because of that karma, they suffer. Recognizing the three poisons is seeing the root of all suffering. One day in a small monastery nestled in the forested mountains, a young practitioner came to his teacher looking weary. He sat down, sighed, and said, "Master, I've been practicing meditation for years. I chant, I sit, I walk in mindfulness, but I still don't feel peaceful inside. Sometimes I crave more knowledge. Sometimes I'm angry that others don't understand me, and sometimes I get lost in endless thoughts I can't escape. Why haven't I found the peace I long for?" The teacher gazed at his student for a long while, his eyes calm and kind, as if looking deep into the young man's heart. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood, walked to the corner of the room, and returned with a glass jar filled with clear water. Sunlight from the window lit up the jar, making the water shine like a mirror. Next to it, he placed 3 handfuls of dry, dark soil. He nodded to his student and said, "Drop each of these handfuls of soil into the jar." The student looked surprised, but followed the instruction. As he dropped the first handful, the water turned cloudy. He added the second, then the third, and the once clear jar became murky, its bottom no longer visible. The master looked at the jar and said, "Do you see? The water was pure and clear, just like your original mind. But when greed, anger, and delusion arise, those endless cravings, bursts of rage and confusion that obscures truth, your mind becomes, like this water, instantly clouded." The student lowered his head in silence. The master continued, his voice slow and resonant, like a temple bell. "The more you stir it, the cloudier it gets. Your mind is the same. The more you struggle and resist, the more unsettled you become. But if you let the jar sit still without disturbing it over time, the soil will sink to the bottom, and the water will become clear again. Your mind is the same. Its true nature is clarity. You only need to stop agitating it to let the poisons settle on their own. Then peace will naturally reveal itself." At that moment, it was as if a light awakened in the student. he realized that he had always thought meditation was about accumulating more knowledge, more techniques, more experiences. But in truth, meditation is not about adding more. It's about letting go of the soil in the mind so the clear water can return to itself. His eyes brightened. A soft smile appeared on his still tired face. He bowed to his teacher, silently filled with gratitude. From that day on, he stopped chasing peace as if it were something out of reach. Instead, he quietly practiced letting go bit by bit so that the clarity of his true nature could gradually reappear. This story still echoes today. It reminds us that sometimes peace does not come from adding, but from knowing when to pause, when to release. Like the clear jar of water, always ready to shine once the mud has settled. The story of the water jar reveals a simple truth. The human mind is inherently clear like the open sky or a stream of fresh water. Suffering is not its true nature. It's only the dust that temporarily clouds the mirror. When the mirror is dusty, we may think it's always dull, but once we wipe it clean, the light naturally returns. The three poisons, greed, anger, and delusion, are just that dust. Greed keeps you from ever feeling satisfied. It pulls you toward the next thing, the next desire, and prevents you from pausing to enjoy what you already have. Anger robs you of calm. Like a fire that ignites with the slightest breeze, it turns you into a victim of your own emotion. Delusion makes you mistake. Illusion for truth, confusing fleeting feelings with your identity, and forgetting the clear foundation within. The important thing is this meditation is not about creating a new peaceful state or decorating the mind with something extra. It is the process of letting the dust settle so that the mind's natural clarity can shine through. When water is still, soil sinks. When the mind is still, wisdom rises. Imagine someone tightly gripping a burning coal. The tighter the grip, the more pain they feel. But instead of letting go, they blame the flame for their suffering. In truth, the pain doesn't come from the coal, it comes from holding it. Greed, anger, and delusion are like that. They only have power when we hold on. Once we let go, the hand of the mind is immediately free, cool, and light. The paradox is, this people often think they need to control everything in order to feel safe. But the tighter we hold on, the more we suffer. Letting go is not defeat. It's trusting in the clarity that already exists within. Only then does real freedom begin. The teaching on the three poisons reminds us of a core truth. Peace cannot be found by chasing external things alone. For so long, people have believed that more money, more fame, or more love will bring happiness. But the real source of suffering isn't external lack. It's the subtle forces within our own minds. When greed arises, we become like someone dying of thirst in a desert chasing mirages. But no illusion will quench that thirst. Only when we pause and truly appreciate what we already have can the thirst dissolve. Nothing lasts forever. Beauty fades. Possessions change. Knowing what is enough doesn't make us poor. It reveals a deeper, lasting wealth within. When anger flares, we easily become a fire that burns ourselves and others. But if we pause, take a few deep breaths, we pull ourselves out of automatic reaction. Recognize that anger is just a passing cloud, not the true sky. If we wait patiently, the cloud will dissolve. The sky of the mind remains clear. When delusion clouds our vision, we confuse thoughts with truth and mistake temporary emotions for our identity. This is the root of so much suffering. Practicing mindfulness is like turning on a light in a dark room. When we see clearly, oh, that's just a thought, not the truth. This is just a feeling, not who I am. Then the heaviness lifts. We are no longer dragged around by illusions. We stand firmly on the ground of the present moment. Interestingly, modern neuroscience has confirmed what the Buddha taught thousands of years ago. When people practice mindfulness regularly, the amygdala, the brain's fear and anger center, becomes less active. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for calm reason and compassion, grows stronger. In other words, meditation not only brings spiritual peace, but also transforms the very structure of the brain, helping us break free from the grip of the three poisons in a very real and measurable way. In daily life, you don't need to do anything big to begin. When you notice craving, simply pause and say, I want something. When anger arises, name it gently, like a child. Hello, anger. I see you. When you find yourself lost in delusion, whisper, this is just a thought, not the truth. Each time you do that, you're not just easing one moment of suffering, you're planting a seed of awareness. And if you keep watering that seed, it will grow into a garden of peace right in the middle of your everyday life. When you clearly see that the three poisons are the root of suffering, you'll realize that the path is not about escaping life. It's about learning to recognize and transform them within the life you already live. Have you ever wondered why some mornings you wake up feeling light and peaceful, yet just one unpleasant conversation, a tragic news story, or a loud street scene can take that peace away? The human mind is sensitive and fragile. It is nourished not only by the food we eat, but also by everything that passes through our eyes, ears, thoughts, and the energy that surrounds us. The Buddha once taught about the 4 kinds of nutriments ahara that sustain both body and mind. The first is physical food, rice, water, vegetables, and everything that nourishes the body. The second is sense impressions, what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. These impressions can be wholesome, like a soothing piece of music, or harmful, like a stream of negative news. The third is volition, the inner drive, the desires and intentions we nurture every day. And finally, the fourth, often overlooked but profoundly important, is collective consciousness, the shared energy of the community, family, or society we live in. If these 4 types of nutriments are mindfully chosen and healthy, our minds will be nourished with compassion, understanding, and wisdom. But if they are toxic, then suffering, anger, doubt, and fear will gradually grow within us. It's like tending a garden. The seeds you water are the ones that grow. If each day we water our minds with competition, anger, and comparison, we should not be surprised when we feel exhausted and restless. But if we plant pure, wholesome nutrients, a kind word, a peaceful melody, a nourishing meal, a supportive community, then peace will bloom in our minds naturally. Long ago, in a quiet mountain region, there was an ancient monastery where a group of young practitioners came to train. When they first arrived, they were full of enthusiasm, clarity, and determination. They woke up early, practiced walking meditation at dawn, sat in silence with the sound of bells echoing through the hall, and shared simple vegetarian meals in quiet gratitude. The atmosphere in the monastery felt pure, like a fresh mountain stream. everyone could feel the presence of peace. But over time, that freshness began to fade. Old habits resurfaced. Someone insisted their way of sitting was the correct one. Another demanded the bell be rung differently. Others complained about unfair work assignments. Little disagreements slowly turned into subtle arguments. Those who came to learn silence and deep listening began to form factions, each wanting their opinions to be followed. The monastery's atmosphere became heavy. Meals no longer carried the flavor of stillness, but were filled with discomfort and awkward silence. Meditation sessions lost their peace as minds became clouded with judgment and comparison. Those who had come in search of freedom were now entangled by their own attachments. The abbot, a Zen master, who had witnessed many seasons of falling leaves in the mountains, quietly observed it all. He neither scolded nor criticized. He simply watched the workings of the human mind, like watching clouds drift across the sky. He knew that only direct experience could awaken his students, not lectures or words alone. One morning, when the group entered the meditation hall, they were surprised to see a basket of fresh, ripe fruits in the center of the room. Golden oranges, red apples, purple grapes, all releasing a sweet fragrance. The room felt instantly refreshed. No one said a word, but their eyes lit up. The whole space became lighter, more pleasant. The next day, they returned to find the fruit basket gone. In its place was a basket of rotting garbage, wilted vegetable scraps and leftovers beginning to decay, releasing a foul odor. Everyone instinctively winced. The atmosphere turned heavy. Sitting became uncomfortable. Breathing was uneasy. No one could focus on meditation. Then the abbot slowly entered the room. He looked around at the tense faces and calmly asked, "Do you see the difference in the same room when we placed a basket of fresh fruit? The air became pleasant and your minds were at ease. But when we replaced it with garbage, the whole room became unpleasant and you couldn't settle. Your minds are just like that. When you nourish them with goodness, they become clear and open. But when you feed them with conflict, they turn into garbage, bringing suffering not only to yourselves, but also to those around you." His words echoed in the hall, not loud, but like a bell that awakens the heart. Everyone suddenly realized that their suffering did not come from the environment, but from the garbage baskets they had been feeding their own minds. The need to win pride and attachment to being right. A meditation student who was known for frequently arguing lowered his head eyes brimming with tears. He suddenly recalled his early days at the temple. His heart used to be as light as a dewdrop on a leaf. But because he always wanted to win, he had turned himself into a victim of the garbage in his own mind. Another student who was usually quiet but filled with inner frustration suddenly felt his chest lighten as if a heavy invisible burden had just been released. From that day on, the atmosphere in the temple gradually changed. They began practicing the art of selecting nourishment for the mind. Words became gentler. Eyes learned to understand. Daily tasks like cooking and cleaning were done in harmony. The garbage bin in the meditation hall no longer held just physical waste. It became a symbol of mindfulness. Whenever someone was about to argue, they would ask themselves, "Am I bringing fruit or trash into this shared space?" That story is still passed down in the old monastery as a cautionary tale. The human mind, is originally pure. But the daily choices we make, what we bring in, what we feed our minds, determine whether we carry the fragrance of flowers or the stench of garbage. And peace is not a distant ideal. It lies in the way we choose mental nourishment. Every word we speak, every thought we hold, every action we take in daily life. The story of the fruit basket and the trash bin is not just a scene from a monastery of the past, it's a mirror for modern life. It reminds us, the mind cannot feed itself in a vacuum. Just as the body needs food, the mind also needs nourishment. And this nourishment doesn't only come from meals. It comes from everything that passes through our eyes, ears, thoughts, and the community around us. If we are unaware, we might end up consuming garbage every day. And this garbage isn't the kind found on the streets. It's the violent news. We watch the negative conversations, we engage in the toxic comparisons on social media, the angry words we throw out carelessly. All of this enters our mind, sinks into the subconscious, and one day we find ourselves more easily irritated, unable to sleep well, or constantly anxious without knowing why. On the other hand, if we know how to filter, we can nourish the mind with wholesome nutrients. A sacred scripture read in morning silence, a soft piece of music that relaxes the heart, a gentle walk in nature, or simply a kind word from a loved one. These are all forms of spiritual food that refresh and brighten the mind. Think of a garden. If you water the plants with clean water, they will thrive. But if you water them with dirty water, not only will they not grow, they may wither and rot. The human mind is that very garden, and what we take in through our eyes, ears, and thoughts is the water we pour every day. If the water is clean, flowers bloom. If it's toxic, flowers die. This is not just a metaphor, it's a truth that plays out in our daily lives. The teachings say, if you want wisdom and compassion, you cannot merely wish for them. You must choose your environment and be mindful of what enters your mind. In daily life, this can be practiced through seemingly small but deeply important actions. Eat with mindfulness, not just to nourish the body, but also to calm the mind. A rushed meal eaten in stress is very different from a meal enjoyed with gratitude. Limit exposure to negative news or disturbing images. You don't have to shut the world out completely, but learn when to stop before your mind becomes overloaded with fear and anger. Listen and speak words that nourish. Words can hurt, but they can also heal. Choosing healing words is a way to nourish your community and yourself. Choose a community or group of friends that nurture goodness. We are influenced by collective energy more than we think. If we live in tension, we absorb tension. If we live among peace, we tend to grow peace within. What's miraculous is that these principles are not just spiritual, they are also supported by modern neuroscience. Many studies show that the brain is highly adaptable. If regularly exposed to stress, the brain's anxiety center becomes the default mode. You become more fearful, more irritable, and it becomes harder to regain balance. But if the mind is nurtured by positive experiences, the brain areas associated with happiness, calm, and compassion are more strongly activated. In other words, you are the product of what you consume, not just with your mouth, but also with your eyes, ears, and thoughts. This opens a hopeful truth. You don't have to change the whole world to find peace. You just need to start by selecting better nourishment for your mind. This practice is not difficult. It can begin with a small shift. Instead of checking social media first thing in the morning, open the window and take a fresh breath. Instead of reading a tragic headline, read a verse of wisdom or a calming reminder. Instead of joining a negative conversation, choose silence or plant a kind word. Just one small shift and your mind is already different. Just like a drop of clean water can purify a cloudy glass, one healthy decision can redirect the entire stream of your consciousness. And gradually, you'll find that you are no longer easily swayed by the trash bins of life, but instead, you carry the fragrance of flowers wherever you go. In the end, we see that the environment and the 4 types of nutriments have a profound impact on the mind. When we choose wisely, we are nourished. When we are careless, we are gradually swept away by the garbage of the world. Have you ever gone through a sorrow that felt impossible to overcome yet, after some time looking back, it had quietly passed like rain that has ceased? Or perhaps you've been so happy you thought that joy would last forever, only to find it fading after a few months, like the last light of day. Life teaches us that nothing stands still. Emotions, circumstances, people, even this very body are in constant change. The Buddha said in the Diamond Sutra, "All phenomena with form are illusory. If you see all forms as non-form, you see the Tathagata." This means that whatever has form is impermanent. If we can see the nature of impermanence, we will see the path to liberation. But people often forget this truth, and that is why we suffer. We cling to joy, afraid it will disappear. We despise suffering, imagining it will last forever. Long ago, in a small mountain monastery, a young meditation student was drowning in grief. He had just lost the person dearest to him. The sudden loss cast his heart into an abyss. Every night he cried until no tears were left. Every day he lived in exhaustion. Food before him could not be swallowed. Sleep came only to leave again. Inside him, one question spun relentlessly. How can I go on living when the person I loved most has left me? At last, unable to endure, he went to the abbot, a Zen master, known for his calm and wisdom. When he met the teacher, he knelt and choked out, "Master, this pain is too great. I don't know how to go on living. I can't imagine life without that person beside me." The master looked at him with compassionate eyes, but did not speak immediately. He allowed silence to fill the space, giving the student time to release the weight in his heart. After a while, the teacher gently placed in his hands a small bronze bell. Its golden shine faded with age. In a steady voice, he said, "Ring this bell." The student, puzzled, obeyed. The sound rang out pure and clear, spreading through the monastery. That tone seemed to sweep away some of the heaviness inside, leaving a tender stillness. But after a few breaths, the sound thinned, weakened, and finally dissolved into emptiness. The teacher spoke again. "Keep this bell ringing forever without stopping." The student was confused. He shook the bell over and over, trying to make the sound last. But no matter how hard he tried, the tone faded, leaving only silence. He lifted his eyes to the master, full of helplessness. The master smiled softly. "You see, every sound fades. It arises, resonates, and then subsides. That is the law. The pain inside you is the same. It cannot stay forever. It may be intense today. It may still echo tomorrow. But one day, it will quiet. Recognizing impermanence is the path that helps you cross over. When you see that everything changes, you will understand that love never truly disappears. It only changes form from the person's presence to memories, values, and the love they planted in you. The student sat in silence. Tears fell again, but this time, not tears of despair, they were tears of release. In that moment, he touched a simple truth: even suffering is impermanent. And within impermanence, love continues. It does not vanish. It transforms into another way of existing. From that day, the young monk no longer resented his pain. He allowed it to come and go like the bell's sound rising and fading. Whenever he remembered his loved one, he no longer sank into despair. Instead, he listened within his heart and felt that person still present in his memories and the kind actions he continued to sow in the world. This story has been passed down to this day as a reminder: no loss can forever empty our hearts. Love once planted between two beings never disappears. It simply takes on another form, quietly supporting us as we walk on. The story of the bell the master gave the student is a doorway into the wisdom of impermanence. The bell rings and then fades, just like each moment of life, appearing shining, then vanishing. Nothing stays the same, not even happiness or sorrow. Yet most of us cling to both. When we're happy, we want it to last forever. When we're sad, we resist and resent it. This clinging and resisting is what weighs the heart down. If you recognize impermanence, the door of freedom opens. You begin to understand that no pain lasts forever and no joy is eternal. Your mind becomes as wide as a field, no longer cramped by fleeting waves. You are no longer burdened by thoughts like, "Why didn't this last?" or "How do I escape that?" Instead, you live lighter, more naturally, like a river, knowing how to flow with its course. Picture the vast sky and the clouds drifting across it. Sometimes the clouds are white and soft, sometimes they're dark and heavy, sometimes there's rain and wind, then clear sunshine again. But the sky has never disappeared. It quietly remains, embracing all. Your mind is the same. Feelings, joys, sorrows, they are only passing clouds. If you identify with the clouds, you see life as endless ups and downs. But if you know you are the sky, you can smile at every phenomenon because you understand they are only temporary. The lesson here is clear. Seeing impermanence gives you the power to let go. In your family, when hardship arises, remember that it will also pass. At work, when success comes, don't be arrogant, because success also changes. In relationships, when loss comes, remember that pain will also fade. Nothing stands still forever. And it is precisely this change that offers you the chance to grow, to learn more about yourself. Modern psychology confirms what the Buddha taught over 2,500 years ago. Studies on psychological resilience show that those who deeply understand impermanence recover from setbacks more quickly. They are less likely to fall into long depression because deep down they hold a quiet belief: this too shall pass. That phrase may seem simple, but it is the rope that lifts people out of the pit of suffering. You can begin practicing today. When you're happy, remind yourself this joy is also impermanent. When you're sad, whisper, this sorrow is also impermanent. Each time you do this, you are no longer swept away by the waves of emotion. You stand on the shore, watching the waves come and go. This observation doesn't make you cold or indifferent. It gives you a healthy distance from your experience. That is true freedom. Freedom from grasping, freedom from resisting, freedom from the chains your own mind creates. Seeing impermanence does not make you pessimistic. On the contrary, it makes you cherish each moment knowing that all precious things are fragile. And as you loosen your grip, you will see more clearly your inner strengths, compassion, wisdom, and the ability to let go. These are the three spiritual powers in Buddhism, the resources that help you walk steadily through impermanence. Let's move on together to the next part to see this strength more clearly. Have you ever wondered in times of suffering or overwhelming hardship what truly helps us stay grounded? It's not money, nor is it power or fame. The real foundation lies in three spiritual strengths: compassion, wisdom, and letting go. Compassion is the lantern that lights the way in darkness, a presence that helps others rise when they've fallen. Wisdom is the clear vision that allows us to see what is real and what is merely a delusion created by the mind. Letting go is the hand that knows when to set things down and not cling to unnecessary burdens. The Buddha once said, "To conquer thousands in battle is not as great as to conquer oneself. That is the highest victory. And to conquer oneself, there is no path other than these three spiritual strengths." Long ago, in a small village by a great river, people lived peacefully, spending their days working the fields and resting under humble roofs. One year, however, after days of unrelenting rain, the once tranquil river turned violent. The water rose hour by hour, sweeping away crops, livestock, and even the ancestral homes that had sheltered generations. Cries for help echoed everywhere. Panic filled the air, and fear took root in every heart. In the midst of the chaos, one woman clung tightly to a wooden chest. Inside was everything her family had saved over the years: a little gold and silver, some wedding jewelry, and ancestral keepsakes. To her, this chest wasn't just wealth, it was memory, identity, the last sense of stability she had. So as the floodwaters rushed in, she held the chest even tighter, believing that as long as it stayed with her, her family's hope remained. But the water kept rising. The heavy chest pulled her under. She flailed, panicked, but still refused to let go. Onlookers from the riverbank shouted helplessly the flood was too strong. Just then, a Zen master, who lived nearby, appeared. Without hesitation, he dove into the raging current to rescue her, but she still clung to the chest, and both of them were nearly swept away. At that moment, the Zen master spoke firmly, his eyes full of compassion. "Do you see? If you keep holding on, you will lose your life. But if you let go, you can survive, and these hands can begin again." His words pierced her mind like a sharp blade. In a single moment, she saw the harsh truth: to hold on to the chest meant to lose her life. In her despair, she wept and released it. The current took the chest away instantly, but the master was now able to pull her to shore. Once safe, she sat gasping for breath, watching the river still roaring beyond. Tears streamed down her face, not just from loss, but from awakening. She realized that what she had clung to, possessions, memories, had become a deadly burden. The true value was not in that chest, but in the breath still flowing in her body, the love she could still offer her children and her village. After that event, the woman changed completely. No longer hoarding every coin, she became generous, and shared freely with her neighbors in times of hardship. In the days following the disaster, when everyone had lost something, she helped rebuild homes, shared bowls of rice, and offered warm clothes. Her presence became a source of comfort and strength for the entire community. People remembered her not for the wealth she once had, but for the heart that lifted others out of despair. This story lived on in the village for years. It wasn't just about a flood. It was about the power of three great strengths. First, compassion, the Zen master's courage to jump into dangerous waters to save someone. Second, wisdom, the clarity to see that life and love are more important than material wealth. And third, letting go, the power that frees us from burdens and opens the door to freedom. If you take a moment to reflect, you'll see this story isn't just from the past. It's a mirror for today's life. How many times are we like that woman clinging to our invisible chests? Pride, wealth opinions, or broken relationships. We fear that letting go means losing everything. But in truth, it's the holding on that drags us deeper into suffering. Only when we let go can we breathe again, live again, and begin again. Just as the river carries all things away, time will take many things from us. But if we hold on to clarity and compassion, we'll know what is truly worth keeping. Not the heavy chest, but the open heart. And when we dare to let go, life will return something even more precious than possessions, freedom, and inner peace. Through the woman's story in the flood, we discover something simple yet profound. Compassion, wisdom, and letting go are not abstract ideals, but three spiritual strengths that can save a life in its most fragile moment. Compassion is not just a soft emotion, it's the power of action, as shown by the master who jumped into the flood. Wisdom is not memorized knowledge, it's the bright eye that sees the true treasure life and knows what can be released material things. Letting go is not about loss, it is the gateway to freedom when we choose to set down what no longer serves us. Without all three, peace is hard to find. Compassion without wisdom can lead us to be overwhelmed by emotion. Caring too much can hurt both ourselves and others. Wisdom without compassion becomes cold and rigid, like a blade that only cuts but does not heal. Even when we have both, if we do not know how to let go, burdens will still tie us down, and our steps will never be free. Only when the three work together can we stand strong like a tree with deep roots, a straight trunk, and flourishing leaves. Imagine you're walking a long road with a heavy backpack. Inside it, you carry a clean bottle of water that's compassion nourishing you, so you don't dry out in the desert of life. You have a bright map that's wisdom guiding your steps. But if along with water and map, you're also carrying useless stones, attachments, past regrets, anger, pride, your legs will grow weak. Letting go of those stones is the third strength. When your backpack is lighter, you can walk farther more freely and toward the right destination. In daily life, these three strengths are not just theory, they are practical practices. When you see someone suffering, instead of turning away or judging quickly, be present, listen sincerely. That is compassion, a small action that can soothe a hurting heart. When facing a problem, instead of letting your mind spin out tragic scenarios, pause. Look directly at what is real. Distinguish between truth and imagination. That is wisdom, the light that prevents confusion. And when your mind is haunted by the past or anxious about the future, instead of resisting, Take a deep breath, exhale slowly, and set down what isn't needed. That is letting go, the release that creates space for peace to return. Modern psychology now confirms the value of these three spiritual powers. Studies show that nurturing compassion activates brain regions related to happiness, social connection, and empathy. Compassionate people are less likely to feel lonely, less prone to mental illness, and physically healthier. Mindful wisdom, the ability to see reality clearly, reduces stress, boosts focus, and improves decision-making. And letting go, what science calls detachment, restores nervous system balance by lowering cortisol, the stress hormone, and increasing serotonin, the neurotransmitter of well-being. This proves that compassion, wisdom, and letting go are not just spiritual ideals. They are practical forces confirmed by modern science, a bridge between the ancient wisdom of the Buddha and today's discoveries. You can begin practicing today with three simple yet powerful questions. In this moment of difficulty, how can I nurture compassion? Am I seeing the truth clearly, or am I being led by a story in my mind? What can I put down right now that I no longer need to carry? Just these three questions repeated in daily life give you the keys to open the door to peace. The world today is full of turmoil, crises, loss, work, stress, tense relationships. You can't stop the river from flowing, but you can learn to steer your boat. The waters may be wild, but if you carry these three strengths in your heart, you will not be swept away. Instead, you will find direction, find your shore, and perhaps even help others cross with you. And maybe the most important question each of us should ask is, am I still clinging to a chest today? A wooden box of wealth, or an invisible box filled with pride, anger, ambition? If so, maybe it's time to let it go so you can hold on to something far more precious, life, love, and freedom in your soul. When we cultivate compassion, wisdom, and letting go, we become like a sturdy tree standing firm in the storm. But for that tree to grow, it needs more than seeds. It needs soil, water, light, and a nurturing environment. Have you ever found yourself always wanting something better, even though you already have enough? Have you ever suffered from holding on to a small object simply because you believed it was yours? Have you ever felt weighed down by too many possessions, responsibilities, or expectations? And maybe at some point, you were caught in the whirlwind of family, work, and social media to the extent that you lost your inner freedom. These forms of suffering aren't random. They all stem from attachment. The Buddha once taught, "Whoever lets go is free." But to see clearly the subtle ways we cling, sometimes we need ordinary stories to reflect upon. In a small monastery nestled among quiet mountains, the monks lived together in simplicity and discipline. Every morning they chanted together, meditated in silence, and shared daily tasks like sweeping leaves, cooking meals, and tending the garden. Life appeared peaceful, but as in all places where people reside, the mind harbored silent waves that only the truly mindful could recognize. In the monastery's meditation hall, there were many identical wooden chairs, simple and unadorned. But for some reason, one of them was painted a pale yellow. It had no sign saying it was special, and no one ever announced it was meant for someone important. Yet that small difference quietly stirred curiosity in the hearts of many monks. One day, a young monk noticed the chair, A very human thought arose in him. That yellow chair must mean something. Maybe it's reserved for someone important. If I sit there, I must be more special than others. The thought seemed harmless, but like a tiny seed falling into moist soil, it began to sprout silently. Then one day, by coincidence, when he entered the meditation hall, all the wooden chairs were taken. Only the yellow chair remained. He walked over and sat down. In that moment, a wave of quiet joy surged within him. He felt as though he had just earned a higher place. During that session, though externally silent, he was bubbling with excitement, secretly proud. I'm sitting in the special chair. But life constantly changes, and the imagined specialness didn't last. A few days later, he entered the meditation hall and saw someone else sitting in the yellow chair. Suddenly, a wave of discomfort arose in him. His previous joy turned into jealousy. He felt heavy, frustrated. Sitting in an ordinary chair, he couldn't concentrate. His gaze kept drifting toward the yellow chair where someone else sat calmly. His heart boiled with strange emotions, anger and disappointment. This restlessness lingered for days. In silence, he noticed he could no longer be present with his breath or steps. Doubt crept in. Why did that person get to sit there and not me? Was the abbot favoring them? Though he thought he was practicing, his mind was now shaken by a single chair. The abbot, having spent many years practicing, didn't need anyone to speak. He could see the change in the monk's eyes and posture. One afternoon after meditation, the abbot called him to the courtyard. The sky was clear, a few clouds drifting lazily. Without asking much, the abbot gently pointed to the sky and said, "Do you see those clouds? Sometimes they're clear white, sometimes gray. Sometimes they move quickly, sometimes they disappear. The yellow chair in the meditation hall is just like those clouds. It's merely a temporary form. If you cling to it, your mind will float away with the clouds and lose sight of the vast sky that is always there." The monk stood in silence. Following the abbot's finger, he saw how the clouds shifted every second, never staying the same. Suddenly, he realized that his suffering didn't come from the yellow chair. It came from attachment, from a subtle desire deep within. In that moment, a cool breeze blew by, washing away his inner discomfort. Tears fell, not of anger or jealousy, but of a gentle release. He bowed deeply in gratitude, his heart filled with appreciation. From that day, he continued to meditate, but his mind no longer clung to yellow chairs or wooden ones. He could sit anywhere and be at peace, because he had come to understand that the true specialness lies not in the seat itself, but in the mind's ability to be fully present and unattached. That story, though it may seem trivial, reveals a deep truth. Human suffering often doesn't come from outside things, but from our own projections and attachments. A chair is inanimate, yet when our mind assigns meaning to it, it instantly becomes a trap. Subtle craving, the desire to be recognized, to feel superior, is the root that robs us of peace. And like the clouds in the sky, all forms, titles, or social status are temporary. If we cling to them, we float away with the clouds and lose the sky, our true freedom. But when we learn to let go, we discover the sky has always been there, vast and unmoving. Perhaps each of us has had a yellow chair in life. It might be a job position, a title, a compliment, or simply a moment of recognition. When we have it, we're happy. When we lose it, we feel hurt, angry, or jealous. But if we look deeper, we'll see it's not the chair or the situation that causes pain. It's the clinging. The story of the monk and the yellow chair reminds us the spiritual path isn't about escaping life, but about learning to recognize the yellow chairs within those subtle attachments we have yet to release. Only by seeing them clearly can we truly be free. The yellow chair in the meditation hall, when seen through ordinary eyes, is just a chair painted a different color. It is not inherently special. But once the mind clings, it becomes a symbol of desire, of wanting to be better than others. This is how craving works, not because things have power, but because we assign them value as mine or important to me. And when that label is attached, bondage forms instantly. Think of a child fighting over a toy. Before they have it, they cry to get it. Once it's in their hands, they fear someone will take it. The joy is fleeting, but the suffering lingers. Adults are not much different. The toys just change form. Now they're asset status or the yellow chair in the meditation hall. The psychological mechanism remains the same: attachment, fear, suffering. The Buddha's teaching on non-self illuminates this. He pointed out that nothing in existence has inherent value. Everything is formed by conditions, and meaning arises from the mind. If we pause and look clearly, we'll see a chair is just wood, clouds are just vapor, status is just social convention. When we drop the labels mine or important to me, we feel light. Mindfulness practice is exactly for recognizing those small attachments. They're quiet, hard to detect, but deeply rooted. You can start by letting go of what seems trivial: a seat, a compliment, a place in line. Each time you release something, you're training your mind to grow more spacious. And once you can let go of the small, the heavier burdens like wealth, reputation, or long-held resentments become easier to set down. Modern psychology confirms this. Many studies show that when people consciously let go of part of their possessions or lower expectations, life satisfaction rises while stress and anxiety drop. The brain is freed from the obsession of holding tightly, and psychological energy returns to the present moment. The yellow chair, therefore, isn't just a story from a monastery. It mirrors your life and mine, where yellow chairs take on many forms. The profound lesson is, freedom doesn't depend on what we have or don't have. It depends on how much we can let go. Sometimes, just letting go of one small thing opens up a vast space within. Long ago, in a small, peaceful monastery nestled in a quiet valley, the monks lived simply together. They shared meals, slept in the same quarters, and even used identical cups for drinking water. Harmony prevailed, until one day a young monk had a thought. He carefully carved his name into one cup and placed it in a specific spot, quietly thinking, "From now on, no one will confuse it. This cup is mine." At first, he felt reassured, but soon after, when another monk accidentally picked up the cup to drink, irritation arose. A cup meant for water suddenly became a source of discomfort. Just seeing someone touch it made him anxious, afraid of losing it. The peace he thought he would gain had become a burden. One day, the abbot noticed the change. During a quiet afternoon, he called the young monk over and asked, "Why did you carve your name into the cup?" The monk bowed and replied, "To keep it from getting lost." The abbot looked at him for a long while and gently smiled. "And since carving your name, have you felt more at peace?" That simple question struck him deeply. He stood in silence, suddenly realizing that ever since he had carved his name, he had felt more restless. Before any cup would do. Drink, put it down, move on. Now the named cup had become a chain dragging his mind into worry and resentment. In that moment, he saw clearly the problem wasn't the cup, it was his attachment. From the name carved in the ego had carved itself deeper. He realized a great truth. Happiness doesn't come from holding tightly, but from letting go. This seemingly simple story opens up a deep truth. Sometimes it's the smallest things, a cup, a compliment, a minor privilege that disturb our peace. Not because external things trap us, but because of the idea of mine in our minds. When we release that label, everything becomes light again. Have you ever found yourself holding on to a named cup in your life? It could be an object, a title, or an opinion. And every time someone touches it, you feel irritated or uneasy. If so, recall the Zen master's question, are you more at peace because of it? That question alone can lead you to the truth. Peace doesn't come from carving your name on things. It comes from the ability to let go. The named cup in the monastery is a vivid symbol of attachment. The human mind naturally wants to possess. We believe that when something belongs to me, we'll feel safer. But in reality, possession brings only a fleeting sense of security and sows the seeds of fear of loss. The Buddha once taught a simple yet profound truth. Whatever arises from attachment leads to suffering. That truth echoes through time, reminding us that suffering doesn't stem from the things themselves, but from our clinging. Imagine a hand gripping a stone. At first it seems harmless to hold it, but the longer you grip, the more your hand tires, muscles tighten, and pain arises. The pain doesn't come from the stone, but from the clenching. And only when you release it can the hand truly rest. The mind is the same. We suffer not because of the outside world, but because of the habit of clinging to status, possessions, an image of ourselves, or an opinion that must be right. From the story of the cup, we learn that happiness doesn't lie in the ability to hold on, but in the capacity to release. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning responsibility or becoming indifferent. It means setting down the burden of the ego, the label of mine. Only then do we create space for true peace and freedom. In daily life, you can begin practicing with small things. Give away something you no longer use but still keep out of attachment. Stay silent once instead of arguing to be right. Accept sitting somewhere without asserting, "This seat is mine." Each small act of letting go lightens your mind. You'll discover that happiness doesn't come from accumulating more, but from placing things down. That is the freedom mindfulness and meditation offer, not adding something new, but removing the weight of grasping. Then your heart becomes like a bird gliding through the vast sky, unbound, fearless, serene. Long ago, in a prosperous village, there lived a man known for his great wealth. His storerooms overflowed with gold and jewels stacked like mountains. Outsiders looked up to him, believing he must be the happiest man alive. But behind the secure gates and high walls, he lived in constant anxiety. Every night he tossed and turned, unable to sleep. At the slightest sound outside, his heart would race, fearing thieves. Even when seated before fine meals, he had no appetite, haunted by images of loss today, by robbery tomorrow, by his own family turning on him for inheritance. The wealthier he became, the more miserable he felt. His riches were like invisible chains locking his mind in a state of relentless tension. One day, while wandering in search of peace, he stumbled upon a Dharma talk by a renowned Zen master. The master spoke gently, but his words pierced straight into the man's heart. Wealth may protect the body for a while, but it cannot protect the mind. Clinging to possessions is like holding a burning coal. The tighter you grip it, the more it scorches. Only by letting go can the hand be free. Sitting under a tree, hearing each word sink in, the man felt as if he had awakened from a long dream. He realized that his suffering didn't come from gold or silver, but from the attachment rooted in his own heart. The very next day, he did something he had never imagined. He opened his vaults and began giving away chest after chest of gold and silver to the poor in the village. Widows received help, orphans found care, and struggling laborers were given support. Many wept, and the man felt as if a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted from his soul. After giving away most of his wealth, he kept just enough to live simply. Then, something miraculous happened. That night, for the first time in years, he slept deeply. The next morning, even a humble bowl of vegetables tasted incredibly delicious. Meeting others, he could finally smile, his spirit as light as the morning breeze. Sometime later, he visited the Zen master and bowed with gratitude. "Master, I spent my life chasing wealth thinking it would bring happiness, but I never truly knew peace until I had nothing left to lose." His words rang like a bell, reminding us that happiness isn't about how much we hold on to, but about how much we can release. True freedom doesn't come from vaults of gold, but from a heart that knows how to stop to share and to live lightly with just enough. That story leaves us with a deep curiosity. If we let go of even a part of our own burden, could we too touch the peace that man found? Perhaps the answer lies right in your own hands, hands that can either continue to clutch or begin to loosen and be free. The story of that wealthy man reveals a simple yet profound truth. True happiness doesn't arise from accumulating more, but from the ability to release what weighs us down. When we loosen our grip on possessions, the mind is naturally liberated. Picture yourself walking a long road carrying a heavy backpack. At first, you think it's filled with treasures and necessities. But as you walk, your shoulders ache, your back tightens, and your steps slow. The beauty along the path goes unnoticed because your mind is focused only on the burden. Only when you pause and set the pack down do you suddenly realize the road was always beautiful and your breath can be light and grateful. In modern life, you don't have to give away all your possessions like the man in the story, but you can learn a new way of living to own without being owned. You may have a house, a job, belongings, but don't let them own your heart. Let possessions remain outside your hand, not inside your mind. Because once something sits in your heart with the label mine, it invites fear, comparison, and unease. Modern science confirms this too. Psychological studies show that those who value experiences and connection over material goods tend to be happier and more emotionally stable. They find joy in a meal with friends, a walk in nature, a moment of true presence with loved ones. These experiences can't be stolen, nor do they decay with time. The lesson here is clear: happiness doesn't come from holding on to everything, but from letting go at the right time. When you choose to set down your backpack, your mind opens up, and you'll see that peace was never far. It was always waiting for you to stop gripping so tightly. Today, suffering no longer stems solely from poverty or deprivation. It often arises from subtle, invisible threads of attachment. These threads are unseen, but their power to bind the heart is immense, robbing people of the inner freedom they naturally possess. There was a father who devoted every day to work. He believed that earning more would ensure his family's happiness. But in chasing ambition, he didn't notice that his child's childhood was passing by without a present father. The child grew up with material gifts, but lacked the warmth of a hand to walk to school or a sincere good night question. When the father finally paused to reflect, he realized he had traded something priceless for a string of empty numbers. There was a mother who clung tightly to expectations. She wanted her husband to be a certain way, her child to meet certain standards. But those demands turned the home into a place heavy with tension. Mealtimes were no longer joyful but loaded with pressure. The husband felt suffocated, the child anxious, all because she couldn't let go of control or let her family simply be who they were. And there was a young person who seemed free, yet felt lost in the world of social media. Every day he scrolled endlessly, watching friends flaunt success and happiness and comparing himself to them. At first it sparked envy. Then came insecurity. Eventually it became chronic fatigue. Time passed in meaningless comparisons while his spirit grew increasingly hollow. Despite their different situations, all three shared something in common. They let attachment dominate their lives. The father was attached to work, the mother to expectations, the youth to online images, and all of them lost their inner freedom. The irony is, they weren't lacking anything. The father had family, the mother had love, the youth had youth. But by holding on too tightly, they lost what was already there. Happiness didn't disappear, it just became unreachable. This story invites us to reflect how many times in our own lives have we been like them. Perhaps we are losing our peace, not because of lack, but because of excessive attachment. And if we can learn to let go, to pause and be fully present, happiness might quietly return in the simple things all around us. The Buddha once taught, "In clinging there is suffering. Without clinging, there is no suffering." This is not some distant philosophy, but an evident truth in daily life. Family does not inherently cause suffering. Work does not inherently cause suffering. Even social media by itself does not bring pain. It is our attachment, our identification, and our comparisons that bind the human mind. Imagine a bird with strong wings born to soar high, but when tied down by a thin string, it cannot fly. The human mind is the same. Attachment is the invisible string that makes us believe we are free, while we are actually just circling within a confined space. We carry the full potential to rise in peace and happiness, but it is our clinging that holds us back. The important thing is not to leave your family, quit your job, or abandon social media. These things are merely tools. What we need to learn is how to engage with them mindfully. When you are with your child, be fully present without letting your mind be distracted by your phone or worries. When you work, work in the spirit of service, not merely to accumulate, but to contribute. When using social media, treat it as a tool to connect and inspire, not as something that controls your emotions or sense of self-worth. Modern science affirms this truth. Studies show that simply reducing social media time by half can significantly lower stress and anxiety. That means freedom does not come from abandoning everything, but from how we choose to live with awareness in each moment. The lesson is clear. Happiness is not about how much we have, but about our ability to let go and use what we already have with wisdom. When we learn to untie the strings of attachment, the wings of the heart are free to fly in the vast sky of peace. The stories above show that even a golden chair, a cup of fortune, or ordinary habits, any of them can become shackles if we are attached. But if we learn to let go, they become opportunities for true freedom. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to be born full of compassion, ready to embrace others with kindness, while others live in constant suspicion, anger, and find it hard to forgive? Or why someone raised in comfort still carries deep sorrow, while another, who grows up in hardship, develops extraordinary resilience? In Buddhist teachings, this is explained through two factors: personal karma and the nurturing environment. Personal karma is like a seed planted through many lifetimes, manifesting as genetics, family circumstances, and inherent psychological tendencies. The environment is the soil, the climate, the people, and conditions around us. The seed that receives water and care will grow. The one neglected will wither. The Buddha once said in the Anguttara Nikaya, "The mind is like fertile soil. Whatever seed is sown, that is what it will nurture." So a person's life is not fixed by fate, but shaped by both what is given and what they choose to cultivate. Long ago, in a small village, there was a boy who had lost his father at a very young age. He lived with his mother in poverty, their shabby home sitting on the village outskirts. Although his mother loved him dearly, the pain of loss and daily struggles made the boy quick to anger. Just a harsh word or a teasing remark would trigger an outburst. He would yell, argue, or even get into fights. Villagers often witnessed these scenes and would shake their heads, saying, "He carries his father's karma." His father was hot-tempered, and now the son is the same. These words, though casually spoken, became chains that bound the boy's self-perception. He began to believe that he was born with anger and couldn't change. One day, after yet another quarrel with local children, the boy sat sulking under a tree. A Zen master happened to pass by. Seeing the red eyes and frustration on the boy's face, the master didn't scold him. Instead, he sat down beside the boy and slowly pulled a small seed from his sleeve. Holding it in his palm, he said, "If this seed is planted in dry, barren soil, it won't grow. But if it is planted in rich soil and watered every day, it will become a great tree." People are the same. Inside you is a seed of anger, but it only grows if you feed it. If you instead choose to nourish the seeds of understanding and love, those will sprout and thrive. The boy stared at him, puzzled. No one had ever told him that anger wasn't destiny. It was just a seed, and that he had a choice in what to water. The master smiled gently and continued, "Starting today, instead of feeding your anger, try doing one good thing each day. Just one. Help your mother be kind to a friend, or smile instead of shouting. You'll notice new seeds starting to sprout inside." Those words lit something inside the boy. That evening, he tried. When his mother returned carrying heavy water buckets, he ran out to help. Just a small act, but it brought a bright smile to her face. That smile made him feel strangely light. The next day he played with the village children and made space for a younger one instead of pushing. He felt a flicker of joy, and so day by day he began planting good seeds. Time passed. The boy once known for his temper became gentle, attentive, and kind. Villagers started to notice the change. They no longer spoke of his past, but remembered him as someone generous and open-hearted. This story holds a deep truth. No one is bound by the past or karma. Within each of us are countless seeds of anger, selfishness, but also of compassion and wisdom. The question isn't which seeds we have, but which ones we choose to nourish. And once we change how we cultivate them, our whole life transforms. The orphaned boy and the Zen master's seed taught a powerful lesson. Personal karma is not a life sentence. Karma isn't a chain, it's a seed. Whether it grows, thrives, or withers depends on the conditions we offer it. Someone with a tendency toward anger, if surrounded by violence and resentment, will have their anger reinforced daily. That seed will grow into a thorny tree, harming self and others. But the same person in a kind and compassionate environment will find their anger weakening. In its place, the seeds of patience, love, and understanding will rise like green sprouts. The key is not just recognizing the seed, but choosing the soil. We are not merely a bundle of traits. We are also the soil, the water, the sunlight. We are our own gardeners. Imagine a mango tree and a banyan tree. If the mango tree grows in poor, dry soil, it will remain stunted and fruitless. But in rich soil with daily care, it will bloom and offer sweet fruit. People are the same. We're not just the mango or the banyan, we are the field. And we decide how that field is tended. In other words, we are each the gardener of our own life. The Buddha taught that while we inherit past karma, every moment we are also planting new karma. A word, a thought, an action. Each is a seed sown into our consciousness. They don't disappear, they wait. And the beautiful truth is we get to choose which seeds we water and which we let rest. In daily life, this practice can be very concrete. When anger arises, name it. This is anger. Just naming it brings awareness. When in a toxic conversation, you can choose to walk away or remain silent rather than absorb more negativity. When the moment allows water good seeds with small acts, a thank you to family, a smile to a stranger, or a simple gesture of kindness. Each day you plant a good seed, your inner soil becomes more fertile. One day, you may be surprised to find within you a whole garden of peace. Modern science supports this through the concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape itself through habits. If you repeatedly act out of anger, the brain strengthens those pathways. But if you practice patience and compassion, your brain builds new paths until calm and empathy become your natural reflexes. In other words, you can recreate yourself not through magic, but through daily mindfulness. This means you are not trapped by old karma. No matter your past, the present is fertile ground for planting new seeds. Every choice today, a thought, a word, an action, is a seed for who you become tomorrow. The metaphor of seeds, trees, and environment helps us grasp a deeper truth. We are influenced by the past, but free in the present. When we become mindful gardeners, we nourish not only our inner peace, but also bring joy to others. And to walk this path well, We must learn to let go of unnecessary attachments and remember the impermanence of all things. Eventually, you'll come to realize happiness is not about how many seeds you carry, but about which ones you choose to water. And that simple act of choosing is the doorway to true freedom. In life, much of our suffering doesn't come from external events, but from how tightly we cling to the image of who I am. When someone challenges our identity status or self-image, our mind reacts intensely. Sometimes it's not the words that hurt us, but how they threaten the ego we're trying to protect. The Buddha once taught in the discourse on the characteristic of non-self, "This body is not me. This feeling is not me. This thought is not me." When we cling to the notion of self, we generate suffering. When we see clearly the nature of non-self, we can release our attachments. But most people fear losing their status or the image they've built. That fear becomes a chain. Let me ask you, how many times have you felt angry not because something truly serious happened, but simply because someone disrespected or failed to acknowledge you? And when that anger flared up, were you happy? Long ago, during a time of war, there was a famous general known for his bravery. He led thousands of soldiers and never lost a battle. Wherever he went, people admired him and officials honored him. His name became a symbol of power and victory. One day, after a major battle, the general heard about an old Zen master who lived quietly in a small mountain temple. People said the monk cared nothing for fame or fortune and spent his days meditating and teaching the Dharma. The general became curious, mixed with pride. He thought, surely a man living in the mountains would be honored to meet someone like me. After all, the whole kingdom knows my name. He arrived at the temple with his entourage. The sound of horses and armor echoed through the monastery grounds, drawing the attention of the monks. Yet the old master sat calmly under a tree, unmoved by the commotion. As the general approached, he expected a grand welcome. But the Zen master merely looked up and smiled, no bow, no greeting, no sign of reverence. The general's pride flared. With a furrowed brow and stern voice, he asked, "Do you know who I am? I command thousands of troops. I've won countless battles. My name alone strikes fear in my enemies and earns the respect of the people. Why do you act so indifferent?" The master remained calm, looking directly into the general's eyes, his gaze steady and serene. Then he softly asked, "And when you are alone with no soldiers, no armor, no titles, and no victories, who are you?" The question struck like an invisible blade cutting through the general's pride. He stood frozen, wanting to reply, but unable to find words. He had lived his entire life under the spotlight of achievement and the label of great general. But before this question, he felt like a lost child unable to answer. The air around the temple grew still. The mountain wind whispered through the leaves as if echoing the question, "Who are you?" After a long silence, the general knelt before the master. His voice trembled. "I've spent my life hiding behind my title, chasing an image others assigned to me. I realize now I never truly knew who I was." The master smiled, gently saying nothing. That silence spoke volumes. A door opened in the general's heart. From that day forward, he returned to the temple often. No more grand entrance, no entourage, just a humble man sitting in meditation beneath the trees, breathing in stillness. He began letting go of his attachment to titles and the image society once praised. And he discovered that this peace, this freedom was deeper and more lasting than any victory he had ever won. Fame brings applause, but also weight. Only when we look at ourselves without armor, without authority, can we touch the true essence of life. And that became the greatest victory the general ever achieved, the conquest of his own ego. The story of the general and the question, "Who are you without soldiers or titles?" is a mirror for all of us. It reminds us that ego and status are just outer garments. We are born without a nameplate, and we leave this world without medals. Yet we spend our lives protecting those fragile robes, riding the highs and lows of others' approval. Praise lifts us, criticism crushes us. In Buddhism, this wisdom is called non-self. But non-self doesn't mean we don't exist or that life has no meaning. It means seeing the truth our body, mind, roles, and possessions are all formed by conditions. There is no fixed, unchanging me. When we understand this, we no longer need to defend a false image. We can live authentically, freely, and simply. Imagine a clay pot. If we believe it's indestructible, we panic at the first crack. But if we know it's made of clay and will one day break, we can appreciate it while it's here and let go when it's gone. The ego is like that pot, a collection of memories, experiences, and context. Clinging to it is like tightly holding a fragile object, fearful it might break. Only by setting it down can our hands and hearts become truly light. In truth, most suffering in life doesn't come from events, but from our attempts to protect the ego. A small criticism can make us burn with anger, not because it's deeply offensive, but because it touches our pride. A compliment can make us swell because we identify with it. And when our identity is shaken, we fall into crisis, forgetting that we are not our roles. The lesson is clear: to be truly free, we must learn to let go of the ego. In everyday life, you can practice through simple but powerful steps. When criticized, instead of reacting, ask yourself, am I defending my pride or seeking the truth? When praised instead of inflating, remind yourself, praise and blame are like passing winds. They don't change who I truly am. When stressed about your image or status, pause. Take a deep breath and say, I am not just a job title, possession, or social role. This is not just abstract philosophy. Modern psychology confirms it. Studies on self-distancing show that people who are less attached to their identity or social image experience less stress, handle conflict better, and have stronger mental health. In other words, letting go of the ego is not just spiritual freedom, it's also a path to emotional well-being. It's important to understand, letting go of the ego doesn't mean becoming passive or irresponsible. It doesn't mean abandoning your duties or denying your roles. On the contrary, letting go allows you to live with freedom, unbound by labels. When you no longer cling to who I am, you can become whatever the moment calls for. You can be a parent with your child, a teammate at work, a friend in need, like water shaping to its container, yet staying pure. That is true freedom to live in the world, fulfill roles, but not be consumed by them, to move through praise and blame without being swayed, to dwell in impermanence yet remain steady like the open sky. Have you noticed how much of our day is spent staring at a screen, a phone, a computer, or other devices? During those hours, our mind gets swept away by countless images, stories, comparisons, and desires. The digital world opens up vast spaces, but it's also full of illusions. In that space, it's easy to fall into greed, wanting more, wanting to be like others, and into constant comparison, feeling inferior or superior. But the Buddha taught in the Anguttara Nikaya, no one causes you more suffering than your own untamed mind. Technology itself isn't bad, but if our mind is unsettled, it becomes a fertile ground for feeding greed, anger, and delusion. On the other hand, if we practice mindfulness, technology becomes a tool for awareness, not an invisible chain. So how do we navigate the digital world without losing ourselves? One day in a quiet monastery nestled in a valley, a young meditation student came to his teacher looking exhausted. He sat down, his eyes red from lack of sleep, and said, "Master, I feel like I'm wasting my life on my phone. I open it just to check the news for a moment, but then one video leads to another. Each time I feel more anxious. I compare myself to the people I see. They seem wealthy, happy, successful. I feel small and inadequate. I feel miserable. How can I break free?" The old teacher didn't answer right away. He quietly stood up and brought over a glass jar filled with clear water. He placed it in front of the student, opened a bottle of ink, and dropped in a few drops. Instantly, the water turned murky blue tendrils, spreading throughout the jar. Then he asked, "What do you see?" The student looked closely and replied, "The clear water has been clouded by the ink master." The teacher nodded with a gentle smile. Then he brought a much larger container of crystal clear water glimmering in the evening light. He poured the murky water into the larger vessel. Strangely, the water in the larger jar remained nearly unchanged, still clear. The teacher turned to the student with kind but penetrating eyes. "The information you receive online is like these drops of ink. If your mind is narrow, like the small jar, just a few drops will cloud it. But if your mind is vast like a great lake, even many drops won't disturb its clarity. The issue isn't the information, but the capacity of your mind." The teacher's words rang like a bell deep within. The student was silent. In that moment, he realized he couldn't just blame technology or the outer world. It was his own lack of mindfulness, the smallness of his mind, that made him so easily shaken. He bowed, deeply, moved. From that day forward, before turning on his phone, he practiced a simple ritual. He placed a hand on his heart, took one deep breath in, and slowly exhaled. He reminded himself, "I use technology, not the other way around." Just a few breaths, but they helped him remember that he was the one steering the wheel, not a victim of the stormy currents out there. Slowly, his anxiety lessened, and he learned to navigate the noisy world with more stability, like a wide lake that stays clear, even in rain and wind. The story of the water jar and the ink reminds us of a vital truth. It's not technology itself that causes suffering. A phone doesn't create anxiety on its own. What disturbs us is how we use it when we're not mindful. When the mind is small like a narrow jar, just a few drops of ink, a flashy photo, a negative comment, a careless comparison can cloud our peace. But when the mind is vast and nourished with mindfulness, these influences can no longer disturb us. In this digital era, mindfulness is no longer just a distant concept. From a meditation hall, it's a daily necessity. Mindfulness doesn't mean shutting off technology, but being aware of what we're doing in each moment. When scrolling, we know we're scrolling. When reading news, we recognize what emotions are arising. When watching a video, we observe whether it's making us feel happy, sad, or anxious. Just a moment of awareness like that can stop hours of unconscious wandering. Imagine walking into a busy market filled with noise colors and tempting smells. If you don't know what you came to buy, you'll be pulled from stall to stall, ending up with bags of things you never needed. But if before entering, you say to yourself, "Today I only need a bunch of greens," you'll walk straight to it, buy it, and leave peacefully. The internet is the same, a massive marketplace of temptation. And mindfulness is the map that keeps you from getting lost. The lesson here is clear technology can be a teacher or a thief. It can nurture wisdom or trap us in restlessness. It all depends on mindfulness. In daily life, you can begin with very small steps. Before opening your phone, pause, take a deep breath, exhale slowly, and ask, "What do I need right now? Am I making a necessary call or just trying to fill an inner emptiness?" When you feel the pull of comparison, whisper to yourself, "What I see online is not the full story. Everyone shows their best angle. The shadows stay hidden." You can even set screen time limits, like putting a timer on your trip to the market. And don't forget to schedule detox moments. Step away from the screen, go into nature, sit with family, or simply breathe in silence. That's not a loss. It's recovery. Modern neuroscience affirms what Buddhism has taught for millennia. Research shows that excessive social media use triggers dopamine, the brain's pleasure chemical, giving short bursts of joy. But those bursts fade fast, leaving behind emptiness, anxiety, even depression. Meanwhile, mindfulness strengthens parts of the brain responsible for attention and emotional regulation. It reduces unconscious behavior and enhances resilience. In short, mindfulness is the antidote to tech addiction. The miracle is, you don't need to abandon technology to be free. You just need to be fully present in each moment while using it. That presence, a deep breath, a conscious tap, an unhurried gaze is enough to pull you out of the unconscious whirlpool. Then technology becomes a servant, not a master. And then you will realize freedom isn't about not using a phone. Freedom is not letting the phone use you. Freedom doesn't mean avoiding the digital world, but dwelling within it with a clear and spacious heart, like a great lake still pure even after many drops of ink. In life, neither you nor I can escape intense emotions, anger, sadness, anxiety, jealousy. Most people choose to suppress them, believing that the more they deny their emotions, the faster they'll disappear. But in truth, emotions don't vanish just because we ignore them. They're like clouds when pressed down, they only gather into a storm. The Buddha once said, "There is no fire like the fire of craving, hatred, and delusion, but there is no water like wisdom." This means that if we learn to look deeply, even the energies of anger, sorrow, or anxiety can be transformed into understanding and compassion. We don't need to run away from them, nor do we need to fight them. We simply need to observe them like the weather. They come and go without identifying with or clinging to them. Let me ask you this. How many times have you reacted in anger only to regret it later? And how many times have you realized that if you had just sat quietly for a few minutes watching the anger, it would have naturally subsided and left behind clarity? Long ago, in a mountain monastery, there was a young monk known for his fiery temper. Everyone knew that even the smallest annoyance would cause him to snap, sometimes erupting like a thunderstorm. Because of this, many monks avoided provoking him. One quiet morning, as he swept the temple courtyard under the soft, golden sunlight, a young novice accidentally spilled a bucket of water across the walkway. The water spread everywhere, soaking the space the monk had just cleaned. In an instant, his anger flared. His face turned red, his heart pounded, and his breath quickened. He was just about to shout at the novice and unleash his fury. At that very moment, the master walked by. Without a word of reproach, he handed the young monk a small mirror. In a calm, steady voice, he said, "Look into this before you speak." Surprised, the monk took the mirror. As his eyes met his reflection, he was startled. His face was flushed, eyes-wide lips trembling with rage. He looked like a stranger, fierce and frightening. A wave of shame washed over him, and the fire of anger abruptly paused. He muttered, "Is that really me? Why do I look so terrifying?" The master smiled gently and said, "You see, anger turns you into someone else. But anger is not your enemy. It can also be your teacher, if you're willing to look directly at it. If you observe closely, you'll find that beneath the fire of anger lie deeper roots, the fear of being disrespected, the anxiety of not being heard, or the longing to be understood. If you look deep enough, anger transforms into wisdom, and sorrow becomes compassion." The master's words were like cool water, soothing the storm within him. For the first time, he didn't see anger as something evil to eliminate, but as a mirror reflecting his inner self. From that day on, whenever anger arose, he no longer reacted immediately. Instead, he would sit down, breathe slowly in and out, and observe the sensations in his body and mind. He noticed his rapid heartbeat, hot breath, and tense head, each a signal that anger had arrived. But by simply observing without resisting or following it, the anger gradually faded. Something strange began to happen. After each episode of anger, he understood himself more. He saw hidden fears and the vulnerability he once tried to mask with harsh words. And then he began to understand others too. When he saw someone lash out in anger, he recognized they were also masking pain just as he had. From someone known for his temper, he slowly became someone known for his calm presence and compassionate gaze. People no longer remembered his outbursts. They remembered his quiet strength. That story changed how many in the monastery viewed anger. It was no longer a terrifying monster, but a silent teacher. And the little mirror didn't just reflect a face, it reflected the soul. The story of the mirror reminds us of something vital. Emotions are not enemies to be eliminated, but warning bells signaling that something within us hasn't been seen or healed. When anger flares, it's like fire exposing the fragments of fear, hurt, or unacknowledged longing. If we only suppress or run away, the fire burns underground and may one day erupt fiercely. But if we pause, breathe slowly, and observe mindfully, anger transforms from a destructive flame into a guiding light. In Buddhist teaching, this is the path of transformation. The Buddha taught that no emotion needs to be driven away, because all emotions are impermanent. Anger, sadness, anxiety are like clouds drifting across the sky. If we can recognize the clouds and look deeply into them, we will realize the vast blue sky is still there. Anger is no longer an enemy. Sorrow is no longer a pit, but a doorway to deeper understanding, more self-love, and greater compassion for others. Think of mud and lotus. Mud is smelly and dirty, yet it nourishes the lotus to bloom in purity. If we only focus on the mud, we feel disgust. But if we know how to care for it, mud becomes nourishment for the lotus. Negative emotions are like that. If we react to them, we suffer. But if we look deeply, sorrow, anger, and worry become the raw material for wisdom and compassion to blossom in our hearts. In practice, the lesson here is not to run or suppress, but to courageously face emotions with mindfulness. When angry, don't rush to react. Take a deep breath, exhale slowly, and observe your body racing heart. Shallow breath, warm hands. When sad, instead of drowning in, "Why am I suffering like this?" just sit and say, "This is sadness, and it will pass." When anxious, write down your fears, look straight at them, and ask, "Is this really true or just a thought?" Just by doing this, you take a big step toward transformation. Modern neuroscience calls this affect, labeling the art of naming emotions. Studies show that when we label and observe our feelings, the amygdala, the brain's stress center, reduces its activity. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thinking, balance, and wise decision-making, becomes more active. In other words, by simply breathing and observing, you are already transforming raw emotional energy into wisdom. This doesn't make you cold or emotionless. On the contrary, it makes you a deeper human being. You're no longer swept away by waves of emotion. You stand on the shore observing and use the waves to steer the boat of your mind. You're no longer a victim of anger, sorrow, or worry, but you turn them into allies, silent teachers guiding you closer to understanding and compassion. Transforming emotions into wisdom is a vital journey because emotions flow through every moment of life. When we learn to observe, we are no longer carried away by them, but instead use their flow to nourish compassion and clarity within. There is a truth that both you and I must face. No one can maintain mindfulness alone throughout an entire life. The human mind is fragile, easily pulled away by old habits, external circumstances, and the current of conditioning. On our own, we may be able to stay mindful for a few days or even weeks, but eventually we will feel weak, tired, and fall back into the same old patterns. The Buddha once affirmed to Venerable Ananda, living in the Sangha in a community is the whole of the holy life, not just a part of it. This teaching emphasizes that the path of practice is not a solitary journey, but one of mutual support. So what is the role of a spiritual community? It is like a collective lamp. A single flame may go out, but many flames together preserve the light. The Sangha is where each person is supported, illuminated, and reminded to stay on the path when their mind begins to stray. Long ago, a young meditation student determined to attain enlightenment retreated alone into the mountains. He believed that only by separating from the world could he maintain a pure mind. In the beginning, he was full of zeal, meditating for hours each morning, eating, simply keeping strict discipline. He believed the path he had chosen was the shortest route to liberation. But after just a few months, his initial flame began to fade. His body grew weary, and his mind was full of restless thoughts. Some days he abandoned meditation altogether, lying in his hut, letting his mind wander from one thing to another. Alone in the forest, he felt lost, isolated, and increasingly without direction. One day, needing to go down the mountain to buy some rice, he stopped by a small monastery. There he witnessed a scene that stirred something deep within him. The practitioners woke at dawn, chanting together with the sound of the bell, then meditated silently. Later, they worked together, sweeping the grounds, carrying water, cooking meals. At mealtime, they sat in silence, eating mindfully each spoonful with full awareness. Everyone had a task, but they moved in harmony, like links in a flowing chain. He stayed to observe. One practitioner looked exhausted, his face pale. Immediately, another gently placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Stay strong. We'll get through this together." When another student accidentally spilled a bucket of water, no one got upset. They simply smiled and helped clean it up. The whole monastery radiated a quiet warmth and powerful serenity. Seeing this, the young practitioner felt a question arise in his heart. Is it possible that the path to awakening cannot be walked alone? That perhaps I need companions to lift me up? In that moment, he realized that the solitude of the mountain had led him into the trap of his own mind. But here, in the embrace of a practicing community, everyone was helping one another return to mindfulness. He knelt at the monastery gate and asked to stay. From that day forward, he began his path again, but no longer alone. And within that shared energy, he gradually discovered a steady strength that solitary days could never provide. That story shows us an important truth. No one can maintain mindfulness alone for long. The human mind is inherently delicate and easily swayed. When we are alone, we may fall into laziness, discouragement, or conversely become overly ascetic. But in a practicing community, each person becomes a mirror for the others, a hand to lift someone when they stumble, a bell of awareness when someone gets distracted. In Buddhism, the community is called the Sangha, one of the three jewels, alongside the Buddha and the Dharma. The Buddha taught, "The Sangha is the greatest field of merit in the world." This means that when we live and practice within a mindful community, we plant wholesome seeds within ourselves that we could not easily plant alone. Imagine a single candle in strong wind easily extinguished at any moment. But 100 candles lit together cannot be blown out all at once. Their light is protected and passed from one to another. A spiritual community is the same when you are weak. Others lift you. When you are distracted, others remind you. And when you are strong, you become the support for those around you. In modern life, we also need a Sangha, not necessarily a monastery. It could be a group of friends who meditate together, a Dharma reading circle, or simply a few people who share a common intention to live mindfully. When you have a community like that, you'll find you're not alone on this challenging path. Modern psychology agrees. Research on social reinforcement shows that people are significantly more likely to sustain healthy habits when they practice in a group rather than alone. Someone exercising solo is more likely to quit, but in a group, they remain consistent. A person meditating alone may become lazy, but in a community, the sound of the bell or the presence of others helps them return. Our brains are wired to resonate with our environment, which means a mindful environment generates tremendous transformative power. Here is a very practical lesson. If you want to maintain mindfulness, find a community. When you feel weak, share it. Let others lift you. When you feel strong, offer that strength, be a support for others. A practicing community isn't a perfect place. Not everyone in it is holy. But it is precisely through living together patiently and supportively that our compassion and wisdom are refined. So if you are walking the path toward inner peace, don't walk it alone. Find your Sangha to shine together, to return together, and to realize that mindfulness is not a solitary pursuit, but a shared song echoing in the hearts of many. Have you ever noticed that most of the time we're not truly living in the present moment? When we work, our minds wander toward rest. When we rest, we start worrying about tomorrow's work. Even when we're with our loved ones, we're often lost in distant thoughts. That's why we rarely experience life in its fullness. The Buddha once said in the Anguttara Nikaya, "Do not chase after the past. Do not seek the future. Contemplate the present moment. That is the path to peace." This means that peace doesn't exist in some distant future, nor does it dwell in the past. It is found in this very moment when we can rest in our breath, our smile, our steps. Are you truly living or just chasing after shadows of the past and images of the future? A long time ago, in a small monastery nestled in a quiet valley, there was a young student full of yearning for enlightenment. His heart was constantly tormented by one question: when will I finally find peace? When will I be free from all this suffering inside me? Every day he would visit his master eyes full of hope. Each time he would bow respectfully and ask, "Master, when will I attain true peace?" The old Zen master with silver hair and a gentle gaze would simply smile. He never gave long explanations or lofty teachings. He would softly say, "Drink your tea." The student was confused. Out of all the teachings he had hoped for, the master only mentioned something as mundane as drinking tea. He walked away puzzled, but didn't dare question further. The next day he returned even more desperate. "Master, I've meditated, diligently chanted daily, followed the precepts strictly, yet my heart is still restless. When will I finally find happiness?" The master smiled just as he had the day before. His eyes remained calm, as if seeing through everything, and once again he said the same thing, "Drink your tea." This time the student's disappointment deepened. He felt as though the master wasn't paying attention to his suffering, but out of respect, he said nothing, just bowed in silence. Time passed. The question remained, and the master's answer never changed. Then one morning, while dew still clung to the leaves, the student came again, and once more the familiar reply, "Drink your tea." With no other option, he sat down and picked up the cup of tea just poured for him. But this time, instead of waiting for some profound teaching, he decided to simply do as the master said. He brought his full attention to the cup in his hands. He watched the thin steam rising, swirling into the air like a dance. He felt the warmth soaking into his palms, inhaled the gentle fragrance spreading around him. As he lifted the cup to his lips, each small sip seemed to seep into both body and mind, and in that moment, his mind became still. All the anxiety, the striving, the endless questions faded away. He suddenly realized peace isn't in some faraway place. It's not waiting in the future, nor lost in the past. Peace is right here in the cup of tea, in the breath in the present moment. He had never truly lived. Tears rolled down his cheeks this time, not from pain, but from awakening. He understood that all these years he had been chasing after something that had always been right in front of him. From that day on, whenever his mind became restless, whenever his thoughts ran wild, he remembered the master's words, "Drink your tea." And drink your tea was no longer just a physical act. It became a sacred reminder to return to the body, to the breath, to the now, to realize that peace is not elsewhere. It has always been waiting quietly in the most ordinary moments of life. The story of drinking tea is more than just a charming tale between a teacher and his student. It reflects the journey of returning to oneself. It reminds us that peace is not some distant reward after years of effort. Peace is presence. It's in the breath going in and out. It's in the warmth of the teacup resting in your hand. We often lose the present moment because we believe happiness must be something big, a success, a milestone, a special event. But in Buddhism, true happiness is not at the end of the road. It is woven from the small pieces of daily life, a steady breath, a gentle smile, sunlight dancing through the leaves, or a cool drop of water flowing across your hand. Whoever can fully live in those simple things, that person is truly free. Imagine someone holding a bottle of fresh, clean water. He's thirsty, but he doesn't drink because he believes somewhere out there must be a sweeter, purer source. So despite having water in hand, he keeps suffering from thirst. We are the same. The present is the water in front of us, but we keep running toward the future, believing happiness is over there. And so we tire ourselves out, feel disappointed, and forget that just by stopping and drinking, now we've already quenched our thirst. The Buddha once taught, "Do not seek happiness in the future. Do not regret the past. The one who lives fully in the present moment has already touched nirvana." This is not abstract philosophy, it's practical guidance. Each moment can be a doorway to peace. In your daily life, you can start today with small things. When breathing, be clearly aware, I am breathing in, I am breathing out. In that moment, body and mind reunite. When walking, feel your feet touching the ground, every step steady and slow as if you are walking on sacred earth with reverence. When eating, don't rush. Notice the colors, the flavors. Send gratitude to the soil, the rain, and the cook who made the meal possible. When smiling, smile genuinely. Let the smile go beyond your lips, soften your heart, and ease your worries. Modern neuroscience has confirmed practicing mindfulness reduces activity in the brain's default mode network, the area associated with anxiety, and increases the regions responsible for emotional regulation and focus. Just a few minutes of conscious breathing can trigger the release of endorphins and oxytocin, the hormones of calm, joy, and connection. In other words, you don't need to wait for a perfect day in the future. Just a few seconds of awareness in the present can already open the door to healing. Living in the present doesn't mean giving up the future or denying the past. It means realizing that both begin in this very moment. When you live fully now, the past naturally heals because you are no longer pulled backward. The future is nurtured because you're planting seeds of awareness, love, and wisdom in the now. One who knows how to live in the present is like someone returning to their true home. That home doesn't need to be built. It's never been lost. It's simply waiting for you to open the door and walk in. And when you do, you'll see peace is not something to achieve. It's your original nature always here, just waiting for you to stop searching elsewhere and let it reveal itself. Tonight, before you close your eyes, remember peace doesn't live in tomorrow nor in some distant place. It is right here in your breath, in the gentle rhythm of your heartbeat, in the moment you allow yourself to pause and truly be here. I know this path can sometimes feel rough, but you're not walking it alone. Each time you choose to soften to love, to see with the eyes of understanding, you are walking alongside countless other souls, also on the journey of awakening, and your presence tonight is a part of that shared path. I am deeply grateful that you've taken this time to listen and walk a little while with Buddhism Seeds. If what I've shared touches you, I invite you to keep nurturing this seed of peace by subscribing to the channel, liking the video, sharing it with someone who might need it, and leaving a comment below so I can hear your voice and heart. That connection is what makes this journey meaningful. And now, as you drift into sleep, may your mind settle like a calm lake. Let sleep become a gentle meditation, a place where you release all worries and return to the quiet already within you. May you have a deep sleep, a truly fresh morning, and a heart that keeps opening to love and to wisdom. From Buddhism Seeds, I send you blessings and heartfelt thanks. See you again on the next journey. Good night.